up and do anything for Big Mama, right? Or that woman who thinks the same way, who just thinks that the world owes her something, and she's not here to benefit anybody else. Well, let me just say this: that's something I've seen in a lot of families, and when I've studied wealth in Black families and Black communities, one thing I can tell you is that these economic leeches, that economic leechism, has to be eradicated. And the reason I say that is because I've seen families that could be doing very well financially, could be in a really good space if they didn't have one or two people who were just sort of felt like the world owed them something, who were just there to take and never to give anything. And I thought about this, right? And I've seen this in my own family, and I kind of analyzed this and said, where does this begin? Where does this start? Well, what I've concluded is that a lot of it starts in birth. Like when you're a kid, you really think the world owes you something. You think your mother has to take care of you. You think your father, owes you his life. You think that your parents are supposed to pay your bills, and that people are just supposed to do things for you. And at some point, somebody's supposed to slap you out of it and remind you that life is what they call a zero-sum game. That means that, or another way to say it is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. So that means that when you show up and you can't cover the cost, somebody else has to cover the cost for you. When you make a baby and you're not paying child support on the baby, somebody's got to pay to take care of the baby. It's going to either be the mother, your mama, or some other guy who's decided to take on your responsibility. So what I'm saying is that a lot of families struggle because we don't consciously take the time, and this comes with a recommendation. Everything I lay out here, when I lay out a problem, I'm always going to lay out a solution. So my goal is not just to reflect on the problem, it's to talk about how to solve it. It's very important, in my view, to remind Black children in every Black family that your job is to be an asset to the family. How are you going to be an asset to the family? If you come to the family barbecue, are you bringing food like everybody else, or are you just showing up to eat? When we have a problem in this family, are you there to help solve the problem, or are you coming with problems that everybody else is constantly solving? Right? And this is really important for the development of economic coalitions. Economic coalitions cannot exist when a substantial part of that coalition is built on people that are committed to being dead weight. You cannot, it's like a human body, when it runs, it's all the muscles working together, the arms, the legs, the calf muscles, the thigh muscles, all those muscles are running together. And then you got some fat in here, right? And if you're like 80% body fat, you're not going to be able to run very far. So a lot of your families have a lot of fat and don't have enough muscle. And that's because I believe that you have certain individuals that are just trained to see themselves as freeloaders, to just sort of show up and they believe somebody else is going to do it. Sometimes it might be the baby in the family, right? You always raised him as the baby, and then he grows up and becomes a grown man. In his mind, he's 40 years old, but he's still the baby. Some of y'all have seen that. Maybe it's somebody who borrows money from other people in the family and they don't pay it back because they're like, well, you got it like that. You're going to be all right. That's another example. So let me read some of this to you. And by the way, in case you don't know, those who just came in, I'm reading from my new book. It's called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to boycewatkins.com. The link is right there, or you can find it on Amazon. So commandment number 1 is always be an asset to your family. And so let me give you, I give an example here. I knew a young man many years ago who was the baby of his family. His mother raised him and his 4 siblings all by herself. They didn't have much money, and he grew up with his older sisters to protect him. In addition to providing necessary protection, the young man's sisters made the mistake of coddling him a bit too much. When he got in trouble at school, the consequences were minimal. He also never learned how to provide and protect in the way a man does, largely because his father was nowhere to be found. About the age of 18, he went to jail for the first time. His loving mother borrowed money so she didn't have in order to bail him out. At this point, he was locked out of the economic system and ran the streets with his friends, playing basketball, hanging out, and getting involved in drugs and alcohol. He got a few girls pregnant during his younger years, and his mother took care of the kids for him, even paying his child support. A few years later, he went to jail for the second time. Now he was a broken 32-year-old man with no education, no job opportunities, moving from house to house and woman to woman. Whenever his mother would see him, he was usually in a bad situation. No one in the family ever expected him to be doing well. All they would measure were varying degrees of bad. As his mother grew older, she found that she couldn't cover for her son anymore. She couldn't handle the women and the babies. She stopped bailing him out of jail. She even had to stop taking his phone calls because it was exhausting to keep telling him no whenever he asked to borrow money. Later in life, the man's mother was on a fixed income with her drug-addicted son calling to borrow money. This was until the day he died. The boy's mother died a year later, heartbroken after losing her son in his 40s. No matter how old he'd become, he was always her baby. This story is familiar in far too many Black families. Far too often, we have relatives who were never taught their role in the family and how to be an asset to those they love rather than a liability. All of us know about that person in the family who can't take care of their own kids, can't make good decisions, and can't get their act together. The problem has worsened since the CIA allowed for the importation of massive amounts of crack cocaine and other drugs into the Black community. Now, millions of our children don't even know what it's like to have two loving parents. Many parents can't speak to their children. The Black family has been so horribly harmed by drugs that we should have a zero tolerance policy on all mind-altering substances. These failings in family and parenthood have become a massive emotional and family and financial drain on the family. Trillions in Black wealth have been lost because of relatives who became liabilities to their loved ones when they should have been raised to be assets. The problem is further compounded by the devaluation of motherhood, where we've been led to falsely believe that working for your boss in a factory is more important than spending time with your children. Sorry, but your oppressors taught you this nonsense. This is not who you are. One of the most valuable resources God endows you with at birth is the presence of people. Human life and labor are worth trillions, which we've known since the days of slavery. For hundreds of years, whites have been able to buy and sell slave labor for large sums of money and even use it to back the acquisition of property. The point here is that your children, if you raise them properly, can become tremendous assets to your family wealth. Children who are raised to be assets to the family can help perform many of the functions we typically obtain from the government and corporations. Our kids can provide a low-cost, loyal workforce for our family business. They can provide financial backing when times get tough. They can provide various forms of protection and physical security in old age. Of course, all of this is reciprocal because we all invest thousands of hours and dollars into raising our kids. We feed them, clothe them, and provide guidance, love, and various forms of support all throughout their lives. So many children, if raised to understand their sense of responsibility to the family, pay attention now, this is about values, this is about attitude. You create this, parents, when you're telling your child, tell them little things like, this family is very important. We all come through for the family. We never let the family down. We got to always do our best for the family. Family over everything, right? If you raise them with those values, then they're going to take pride in coming through for their family. They may not always be able to show up 100%. They may not always be able to avoid having problems, but they're going to do their best. That's the point. They're going to do their best. I can't tell you how many people I know who simply fail because they don't even try. And there are so many people I know with all the talent in the world, all the intelligence in the world, all the ability in the world, who don't get nowhere because their attitude is all wrong. Their backward ass, lazy ass, weak ass attitude just don't even want to try. They're not even getting the best out of themselves. I get it. If you have a mental disability, I understand that. Bad things happen. Sometimes we have bad luck. I get that. But there's a difference between going through a tough spell when you are always working to do whatever little bit you can to contribute versus going through a tough spell and just giving up on life. You know, again, this is attitude. Attitude is everything. So let me keep going here. So many children, if raised to understand their sense of responsibility to the family, are very happy to return the favor. So I remember I heard somebody say, well, I don't want to raise my kids just so they can take care of me in retirement. My kids are not little financial assets. No, you are investing in those little kids. You have been raised to believe that the $300,000 per child that it costs to raise a child in America, $300,000 per child, you've been raised to believe that that is a luxury item, that is just an expense that you're supposed to endure and get nothing back on that. Well, let me just tell you, most of us can't afford to give away $300,000 and get nothing in return. No, a happy child is not an adequate return. No, it's reciprocal. You take care of them when they are vulnerable. They take care of you when you are vulnerable. What is it? What are you supposed to do? Just go to a nursing home and the nursing home takes care of you and the child owes you nothing? No, that's not going to happen in our family. My mama ain't never going to a nursing home. I don't care. I said, Mama, if you don't want to be in a nursing home, I'll be damned. They're going to have to carry you to a nursing home over my dead body because I will do everything in my power to make sure that you never have to go to a nursing home if you don't want to, because I'm going to just do my best because I owe that to you. There's nothing exploitative about that. There's nothing exploitative about that. So just understand that when you raise your children with a certain value system where they can put the family over the government, put the family over the corporation, put the family over everything else going on in the world, then you have a stronger family. Instead, the government comes in and replaces the father. The government replaces the family unit. The corporation is the economic provider, and it doesn't have to be that way. There are cultures all across this earth where they don't even think that way at all. They've never been introduced to this idea that somehow the government can replace what the family is supposed to provide. So let me keep reading here. So here's something else to understand. Asking your children to support the family is not a form of exploitation. It's the kind of relationship that helps everyone in the family survive. It's what they call reciprocity. That's how an economy works. A reciprocal relationship or a recursive relationship means I pour into you, you pour into me, I pour into you, you pour into me. Nobody feels used, nobody feels exploited. The only time you feel exploited is when you're giving a whole lot more than what you're receiving. Or the only time I feel exploited is when I'm doing everything for you, and when I need you to come through for me, you don't come through for me. People with the right value systems do not do that. Okay, so let me read more. Okay, so here I make the point that trade is better than charity. So let me explain that. When turning your children into family assets, one rule to consider is that trade is better than charity. The world is not a place where people are going to line up to reward you for doing nothing. As a child, my parents used to say something that may sound depressing on the surface, but was quite sobering over time. That they said, nobody cares that much about your problems. Don't get me wrong, there are people who care about everybody and everything. They might loan you money, pay your rent, or come through for you in a difficult situation. But from what I've observed, even the best of friendships have their limits. If person A is always draining person B, causing him problems, disrupting his life, and only showing up for person B whenever they need something themselves, person B is eventually going to be drained and fed up. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, imagine if somebody was constantly leaning on your friendship for money, leaning on your friendship for emotional support, want you to hear all their problems, but they don't want to hear any of your problems. They never want to help you out financially, and they never can. That's exhausting. That's exhausting. You can't live your life as a human welfare office, or something where you're constantly giving and receiving nothing in return. And I see that sometimes in some of our families. I think that those of you, I had to talk to my wife about that, about sort of just sort of feeling like she had to come through for everything and everybody and do everything for everybody all the time. And I said, you're the tree that everybody is getting fruit from. And if the tree dies, then everybody goes without the fruit. So ultimately, taking care of yourself is the best way you can take care of other people. So self-care is important. The same thing is true for men. For those of us as fathers that are giving everything to everybody, coming through for everybody all the time, you got to take those moments to take care of you. Like I show up, I try my best to show up when I'm talking to you guys. Every day, my goal is to pour into you in terms of what I understand about wealth so that you can make better choices and be in a better position. But believe me, there are points where I say, okay, it's time for me to take care of Boyce. I'm going to spoil Boyce and love him as much as I love everybody else and everything else in the world, because taking care of Boyce means showing up in my best for you all, right? So ultimately, it's all connected. You got to understand that. So here we go. All right, so we've all got friends and relatives who think the world owes them something. They always seem to have the worst luck. Everything that goes wrong is always somebody else's fault. These individuals, in my view, were never raised to understand their role in being an asset to others. Rather, they are a liability. This is where child rearing comes into play. When I speak to my kids, I share a concept called quid pro quo, which means something for something. Now, this doesn't mean that I always expect them to pay me back for anything I give them. It also doesn't mean that they should assume that everyone is trying to exploit them. Instead, it's a general framework to empower them by leaving them with the assumption that you aren't always going to get something for free. Sure, your mother might always be willing to give you something for free, but the world is not. Also, even your mother will grow tired if you're constantly borrowing money and giving nothing in return. Also, consistently leaning on charity from others disables the person who receives the charity, and it drains the person who's always coming through as the superhero. So I'll give you an example. I've seen celebrities when they say, "What are you doing for the black community?" They'll talk about all the charity that they're doing. They'll say, "I'm giving money to this and giving money to that." And a lot of people don't know that a lot of celebrities, they go broke. Many of them don't go broke because they were financially irresponsible. A lot of celebrities go broke. A lot of athletes go broke because they were so charitable to so many people. A lot of professional athletes go broke because they're paying rent for Cousin Willie. They're taking care of Aunt Lucy. They're making sure that they're buying a house for their mama. They're buying a new car for their brother. They created some BS jobs for 5 of their homeboys. So they're taking care of so many people and they're getting nothing back. So they're not making investments in people. An investment is something that eventually gives you a return on that investment. They're throwing the money out there and the money's not coming back. So that's why a lot of them end up going broke, like MC Hammer. Thank you, Derek. So ultimately, my point is to say, stop doing that. Like you can't do that. I don't know many people who can be a walk-in welfare office for dozens of people and maintain that over a long period of time. That is exhausting. Now, but the thing is that trade is stronger than charity. So so it's one thing if I come to you and I say, okay, here's some money. You don't have to do anything. Just take the money and go and pay your bills, and I'm gonna feel sorry for you. And if you have another problem, come back to me again. That's different from me saying, okay, and I'll pay you to do this if you will do this for me. Or I'll send you to get training. I'll pay for your training. And when you get trained, LeBron James did this, by the way, with one of his friends that wanted to be a chef or something. He said, I'll pay to train you to become a chef. And then when you become a chef, you're going to come work for me and you're going to work for me for a fair wage. Right. So ultimately, the ability to make investment, it allows everyone to have much more prosperity. Charity cripples the recipient of that charity. Charity is for elderly people, it's for children, and it's for the disabled. Elderly, children, and the disabled should be the primary recipients of charity, not that grown-ass, healthy-ass Negro who's 29 years old living in his mama's basement, who's healthy enough to go out and hang out with his homeboys and smoke weed all day and make babies, but for some reason he's disabled when it comes to actually helping his mama get a return on her investment for all the money she might have spent paying his rent or bailing him out of jail. There should be no healthy person in your family who is living off the goodwill of other people in the family. And if that's the case, there should be some temporary reason. Maybe he's severely injured or it's something to help that person get on their feet. That should be a general rule. We have in our house, just to tell you guys what we do in our house, I have a 19-year-old son. I'm his bonus dad, and he lives in the house. And we had a conversation where I basically said, you can be here. I want you. I'm happy you're here, but I need you to be an asset to the family, not a liability. I do not want another grown-ass man in my house eating food and not paying a bill in this house and not helping out in this house. That is not going to occur. So here are the tasks. We can do this the hard way or the easy way. The hard way is going to involve me taking you to the bus stop. The easy way is going to be me letting you know some areas of opportunity where you can make a positive contribution to the family and be an asset to the family. And I told him, I said, the number one thing I need you to ask yourself every morning at 10 a.m., we're going to have a meeting. I'm going to ask you the same question every day. What are you doing right now today that is going to benefit your life and benefit the lives of the people in this family? Family over everything. That's the conversation we have, and it works out wonderfully. Now, I have an asset. I have somebody that helps me out with stuff. I have a person I can train and pour into, somebody that I can work with that's actually helping me become more productive, right? He's not a charity case anymore. And then he doesn't have to walk around with the guilt of feeling like he's a charity case, right? Or the disability that comes with putting people on charity. There's a whole documentary on YouTube. I think it was called Poverty Inc., where they talked about how they were disabling African countries by giving all this white European charity. They will put them in the charity bucket, which is basically like putting you in a wheelchair when your legs are working, but they put you in a wheelchair so your legs stop working because you're not even using them, and they literally turned them into dependents. They literally didn't know how to produce anything for themselves, except the only way they knew how to get resources was to sit around and wait for white people to come along and write them a check or give them free pairs of shoes or give them free food. You tell me there ain't nobody on this earth that you can imagine that can be successful and prosperous when they're living that kind of mind with that mindset and living that sort of reality. So ultimately, what I'm saying to you is that I believe, to summarize this, just as a commandment, every child should be raised to understand you are an asset to the family. You may not be able to do much, but you can always do your best. You can always say, well, gosh, I can't help as much as I want to, but I feel bad about it. Let me see what I can do. Nobody should ever feel comfortable. No adult should feel comfortable sitting there and letting other people carry the weight for them, just as a matter of dignity, period. And nobody should allow that to occur. You should shame that behavior. I'm sorry. I know that shaming is a tough word. I know people don't like it, but no, I'm sorry. Some behavior needs to be dealt with and called. No, you don't do that. You a grown-ass man. What kind of man are you? How you gonna sit there and let other people take care of you like a baby? You're not a baby. So anyway, let me keep going. Y'all got me going. This is all linked back to the economics, because think about this. Imagine if you had a basketball team where there were three players. There out of five players, three of the players don't feel like they're supposed to score any points. They don't feel like they're supposed to play any defense. They don't box out on the rebounds. They just sit at half court and eat donuts while the other two players are trying to score all the points. What kind of basketball team is going to win like that? You can't have a team can't win if three of the players are sitting at half court eating donuts. You can get up and you can do something, right? So that's the idea. What can you do? All right. How can you serve the family? In World War II, they used to put the signs, and Uncle Sam would call you and they said, well, don't ask what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. Well, I think it should be done the same way now, except instead of take out the word country and put the word family in there. That's nation building. Let me keep going here. All right. So when my children come to ask me for significant sums of money, I respond with a very simple statement. I do not see you as a charity case, so I challenge you to come to me with a proposal. What am I investing in? My goddaughter, who attended Columbia University, understood the process first. She would come to me with a proposal to receive a sum of money, along with a plan for repayment and execution of the objective she was set to achieve with my investment. My return on investment was not financial. It was seeing my child use my resources to do something positive for herself that will make her into a greater asset for her own life and also for the family. So even when she agrees to repay the entire amount of money, I usually give her 30 to 50% of it back. So it doesn't have to be hard and fast. You don't have to treat your kids like they're somebody off the street, but there should always be some sort of understanding that I'm not just throwing my money at this. I need to understand what the ROI is, okay? By doing things this way, it keeps us out of the guilt box. She doesn't owe me anything and isn't indebted to me. Also, I'm not hit with the unfair pressure of trying to constantly solve someone else's problems. Children who understand such rules are typically the best to leave in control of some portion of your estate or family business when you're old or deceased. I can't tell you how many times that you've had, parents that would leave assets, like a house that they worked their whole life for, to a son or daughter who is financially irresponsible and emotionally unempowered, who will actually take this money and take the assets that you worked for your whole life for and throw it all away. They'll throw it all away, right? So ultimately, helping them understand these things, like understanding like you're not just a bystander, you're not just here. You actually have the ability to change the outcome of this family, the trajectory of this family. That is, in sports, they might call that a playmaker. A playmaker is somebody who isn't just on the field, it's somebody who can actually help the team win, who can make something happen, who can make a play, who can get an interception, who can catch a ball and run for a touchdown, who can throw the ball down the field, right? So this starts very early, in my opinion, and I think it's something that has to be taught. And at the end of the day, it's not whether or not you're always the best asset you can be. It's a matter of just simply committing yourself to trying your best to figure out where you can help out, where you can be supportive. Okay. So let me let me just mention one more thing in this first section of the book. There's more to this this first commandment. I actually wrote about it for a few pages. But the other thing that I talk about is that if I love you, I won't just feed you, I will support you economically. So one tradition many Black families have is to get together for Sunday dinner. Their way to show love for others is to offer them something to eat. These gatherings are a wonderful opportunity for us to catch up with cousins we haven't seen in a while, watch the football game, or engage in family prayer. After Sunday dinner is over, each of us heads in our respective directions for the Monday morning drag of going to work for whichever toxic corporation has economically adopted us. So during the time when our multi-million-dollar families were gathered, we spent exactly no time discussing ways to improve our individual and collective economic condition. So we'll get together and eat the fried chicken and the collard greens and the cornbread, and nobody will spend 1 second talking about investment opportunities or real estate deals or businesses that you can start together or ways you can help each other succeed, right? And that's, again, that's culture, that's training, that's conditioning. There are families that do that. A lot of our families do not. For many families, it's taboo to talk about money. Avoiding financial talk is unhealthy because it is the lack of discussion about money that causes so many family economic disasters. Money is one of the most important variables in your life, yet our kids know nothing about it. Is there any sport or job in the world you can participate in with no training whatsoever? You know, how in the world do you think you're going to win the game of money and the game of wealth if you never talk about it and you've never been trained on it? I mean, does it not surprise you that so many of our people struggle financially when they weren't trained on how to obtain money, how to protect it, how to grow it, you know, how to preserve it? None of these things. So how in the world are you supposed? What makes it? It's completely illogical to think you're supposed to have money when you know nothing about it. That doesn't make any sense. That's like me saying I want to be I want to win an Olympic gold medal in ice skating, but I've never ice skated before. That's absolutely insane. Give me 1 second, guys. Hold on. Okay. All right, I'm back. Okay, so let me read more of this to you. If I love you, I wouldn't want to help you solve the most difficult problems in life. Our perception of money being a taboo subject, that needs to change right now. So if I love you, then I'm going to find the biggest problem you have, the biggest concern you have, and the best area I can help you in, and I'm going to help you to solve that problem. I'm going to help you fix that, right? So instead of showing someone you love them by cooking them a meal, also show your love by supporting their business. Sunday gatherings can be used as a time to invite loved ones into economic opportunities or to offer personal networks that might be valuable sales channels for those you love. You can talk about real estate acquisitions, or at the very least, let your loved one know what you're up to. If I love you, I will help you succeed economically. Anything else is a bunch of talk. And here's another piece I want to throw in here too. When you talk about assets versus liabilities, I think it should be seen as an absolute crime to, how many of you have had relatives borrow money from you and not pay it back? I've talked about that before on this platform, so I won't dwell on it again. But how many of you have had people in your family that have borrowed money from you and never paid it back? Well, let me just say this. That should be seen as criminal. That is theft by deception. That's what that is. They stole from you, right? Now, I'm not saying you go beat them up or anything like that, but here's what that does. The reason that destroys the economy in your family is because economies are built heavily on trust. And if you are financially traumatizing your loved ones by borrowing money from them and not paying it back, then guess what? Traumatized people are incapable of trusting. A traumatized person doesn't trust anybody. If you take a woman out and the man violates her, right, physically, it's gonna take her a long time to trust another man in a vulnerable situation, right? So when you violate a loved one economically, they're not going to want to become economically vulnerable to anybody. So what they're going to do is they're going to go through life saying things that I hear people say, like, "See, that's why I don't loan money to relatives." You don't understand how problematic that statement is and how much that limits your economic possibilities, because being in an environment where you can't borrow from your loved ones, the people that love you the most can't even come through for you in a financial situation because they're too scared you're going to hurt them. If those are your friends, then you don't need enemies. then who are your friends? Who are the people that are going to come through for you? And who are you going to come through for? Right? So think about this. It's very unhealthy and toxic to be in a space where the people that claim to love you the most are the ones that you're the most afraid will actually harm you, because they can take your money and have no remorse, have no regret, have not even feel bad about it. And that's a core value that can be dealt with and dispelled early. Because now let's look at the other side of that. Imagine if you have, let's say you have 4 children, and your 4 children understand, like, look, if you borrow from your sibling, you pay that money back, right? Then guess what? They have a big, broad economy. My money is your money. Your money's my money. If I got it, you got it. If you got it, I got it. So that means we always gonna have it. We'll never be broke now. All 4 of us went to school or whatever we did, and all 4 of us went out and earned our income. All 4 of us are doing okay on our own. And what that does is that's what they call in economics, they call the economic smoothing. Because you now have 4 people that can depend on each other economically, nobody's ever going to be doing bad. Because if you run into a temporary financial problem, because you understand your role as an asset to the collective, I know you're good for it. I know that you're going to do everything in your power to make sure that you get me my money back. And in return, I'm going to be patient with you. I'm not going to charge you a lot of interest. I'm not going to rush you. If you call me and say, hey, I was going to pay you Tuesday, but I need another week, I'm going to say no problem, because take 2 weeks if you need it, because I know you're good for it. Think about how good that feels when you have people around you that you can depend on, as opposed to having people around you who are going to steal from you. Those are 2 separate realities, but those have to be created. That reality has to be nurtured, right? And what that does is that creates possibility for prosperity, because groups that trust each other economically can invest together. Let me tell you a true story in my own family that validates this point. I don't really like to, I don't ever want to have like a public investment fund. That's just not. I like what I'm doing. I know I've had people come to me and say, why don't you create a big fund and pull everybody's money together? I say, no, because Black people are too financially traumatized. And so too many people don't understand that investing comes with risk. And if we all invest in something together and it doesn't work out, next thing you know, people run around screaming, oh my God, you robbed me, you stole from me, right? So I don't want to deal with that. I don't want those kinds of problems. It's just not of interest to me. But one time I had this opportunity of a lifetime. I had an easy flip where I said, gosh, if I could get another $250,000, I can flip that into $500,000 in about 6 months. I said, gosh, my capital's all tied up, and I want to raise the money to get this done, but I don't want to do it in a way that's going to be stressful, awkward, and irritating. So you know what I did? I reached out to a small number of relatives who've known me for 30 years and 40 years or 30 years or longer. They don't need to check my credit report. They don't need none of that stuff. They because they know me. They know what I do. They know how I operate. I know them. And I said, look, this is the thing I want to do. I don't want to make it complicated. I just want to pull together some money and do this quick flip and everything. And this is how it's going to happen. Do you trust me or do you not trust me? And all of them were like, oh, I trust you because I've been watching you. I know what you do, and I know what kind of a person you are. And I know your mama, all this stuff, right? So fine. Here we go. And we did this together, and everybody made money. Some of them made so much money, they were able to quit their jobs. I was able to raise the money very quickly. We took advantage of the investment opportunity. The money went out to the investors. Everybody was better off. And best of all, the best part about it was that it was completely drama-free. Drama-free and trauma-free. Because we were working together in a space that was just a healthy space. Wasn't nobody out here trying to harm anybody or get over on anybody, right? And so ultimately these spaces have to be cultivated, and you got to find those people in your life that can create that kind of space with you. And you invite people in your life who understand these same rules that you understand. Look, I'm going to have your back. You're going to have mine. That way we can all trust each other. Prosperity tends to occur in spaces that are built on trust. And in spaces where the trust is gone, economic devastation tends to occur in those untrusting spaces. One example that's happening in real time right now in India, there's a guy who was the richest man in all of Asia named Gautam Adani. Gautam Adani was very wealthy because he had a big, broad economic family of banks that loaned him billions of dollars to run his family business, and as a result, he was worth over $100 billion. Well, that foundation of trust got cracked because a company called Hindenburg Research wrote a scathing report about Gautam Adani's empire and what they call corporate governance issues, basically saying that the way the companies are managed are very problematic and it could fall apart at any moment. At that point, the trust disappeared. So when the trust disappeared, here's what happened. His stock price starts to plummet. When the stock price starts to plummet, the banks get nervous because the stock was the collateral that was being used to back the loan. So now the banks are worried about not getting their money back. So they start calling in their loans and they say, we're not going to loan you any more money. And then when they go back to try to borrow more money, they have a harder time borrowing money because people don't trust them anymore. As a result, Gautam Adani's wealth, if I'm not mistaken, dropped by about $40 billion in 48 hours. His family wealth dropped $40 billion in 48 hours. Now, why did his wealth drop that fast? It's the same guy, same family, same company, same everything. It's because they lost the magic ingredient. The magic ingredient is trust. It's trust. If you have a space where everybody trusts each other, like you've heard about banks, the Cincinnati Bank and Trust. Trust is critical in an economic system. But trust is very hard to obtain in a group of traumatized people. Nobody's more traumatized in this country than the descendants of slaves. So therefore, if you want to understand why wealth doesn't build very well in the Black community, it goes no further than the amount of trauma and lack of trust that exists within our very own families. So now that we've highlighted the issue, it's up to you to be determined to fix it. How are you going to fix it? Well, first way you can fix it is by being trustworthy. Follow through, on your commitments. Follow through on the things you say you're going to do. Number two, you teach that to your kids. I tell you, a pet peeve I have is because I'm a man, I tend to look at men, in a certain way, and I expect that from my girls too. But gosh, it's like if you're not coming through for people, then you're creating trauma everywhere. You're disappointing people everywhere. And so the other thing you can do is when you're talking about how the culture you shape in your home, you're the father of that house, you're the mother of that house. You can easily sort of lay out some ground rules. And again, that's what this book does. The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. That's the name of my book. What it does is it lays out rules where you can say, we're going to follow these rules as a family. This is a code of conduct. When we commit to this code, this is how we become successful. The mafia does the same thing. The mafia has a code of conduct. Every corporation has a code of conduct. The Apple computer has a code of conduct. That's why they are so economically strong. Without that code of conduct and the trust that's created around that code, they couldn't succeed. The military has a code of conduct. The police department has a code of conduct. Street gangs have a code of conduct, but so do charitable organizations. They have a code of conduct. Economic coalitions between countries have a code of conduct. So the question is, in your family, what is your code of conduct, or do you have a space where anything goes? If you have a space where anything goes and anybody can do whatever they want for themselves whenever they feel like it, then guess what? You'll have an almost impossible time accomplishing anything as a group. It's like having a football team where you tell every player, just do whatever you want. Just go. You can go left. You can go right. You can wear whatever you want to the game. You can run whatever style of offense you want. A team like that will never, ever win against another team that is coordinated, because the coordinated team has all their energy applied in one specific direction. The uncoordinated team has their energy all over the place. So wasted energy is another way that you find a lot of wasted wealth. Okay. All right. So I think I've done a lot for today. We've been in here for a little over an hour. I've given you a lot to think about. Again, the book is called The 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. If you want to get a copy, please feel free to go to boycewatkins.com, or you can go to Amazon. And also, I'm going to do a tour where I'm going to do some lectures on this book and some other things. So if you wanted to see me in person, you can do that as well. Last but not least, Chanel, I think, has been putting the survey in the chat. Chanel, can you make sure that the survey is in the chat so that anybody that wants to take the survey can go take it right now? I would really, really appreciate it. And what I really would love to hear is if you could share your story about anything, any transformation you've had. Like if you say, look, before I started doing this, I was here, Now I'm here. Before I was confused by this. Now I understand it. Before my kids were out of control, and now I've introduced them to investing, and now they're doing some things different. I would love for you to share that, and if you could give us permission to share those stories, that would really help us because the Black Business School, we're building a Black-owned institution. We're building an HBCU that is going to last for the next 400 years and more. And in order to do that, we've already formed our board of trustees. I'm leaving 80% of my wealth to the Black Business School. The other 20% goes to Alicia and the family. The 80%, the bulk of my wealth, is going to the school, to the board, to make sure they can continue the mission even after I'm gone. I don't plan to die anytime soon. I don't have any indication that I'm going to die, but life does that. You never know what's going to happen, so I want to make sure we're prepared. So ultimately, your testimonial will be beneficial to helping us let the world know that we're the best on earth at what we do, and we can't succeed without you. So if you could take a moment to fill out that survey, that would just mean the world to us. So Chanel, did you make sure everybody got the survey in the chat? I'm looking in the chat. So I want to make sure that you got it. Let me know if you need the survey and you don't see it. There we go. Okay. So Chanel put it in there. So if everybody could click on it right now and kind of open it in your browser or on your phone or something like that, I'd appreciate it. I'm about to actually leave out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this open for a couple more minutes so that those of you that maybe didn't see it yet, or maybe Chanel can pop it in there again, you can actually go ahead and make sure you fill out the survey. So I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. God bless you. And thank you all for hanging out with me. And it was a lot of fun. But I will leave this open for another couple minutes in case you need it open to open the survey. Thank you guys. Have a good night. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.